The ocean looked calm on the surface that morning, but every person on the research vessel could feel that something unusual was happening beneath it. The crew wasn't there for treasure or fishing. They were there to map the sea floor for scientific study. It was routine work, something they had done many times before, using high-tech scanners and underwater sensors to create digital maps of what lay hidden under thousands of meters of dark water. The team expected to see ordinary things like rock beds, old shipwrecks, or ocean trench walls. Instead, they found something that ruined every normal expectation. It began with a strange reading on the scanner. One of the analysts frowned at the screen, thinking the machine had malfunctioned. The signal was too clean, too straight, too metallic. Natural rocks don't reflect sound in perfect geometric patterns like that. At first, they assumed it might be a sunken ship from decades past, maybe even a military submarine. But the longer they observed it, the more the structure looked nothing like anything made on Earth. The material wasn't shaped like any known vessel. It had sharp edges in some areas and smooth curves in others, as though made by multiple designs combined into one. The expedition leader asked for the scan to be repeated. The crew restarted the equipment, cleared the system, and checked again. This time, the image looked even stranger. The object wasn't just large, it was huge, almost the length of a football field. The readings suggested it was buried within layers of sediment and sand, as if it had been there for hundreds or maybe even thousands of years. But how could a ship, especially one so advanced-looking, be older than recorded naval history? The question settled like a heavy weight over everyone. Nobody said it out loud at first, but all of them shared the same confused thought. Was it something built by humans? If yes, who built it? And if not, then what exactly was it? The group gathered near the screen, trying to remain calm while their voices got quieter and more unsure. They no longer sounded like confident researchers, but like children trying to solve a mystery too big for them. One of the technicians suggested they might be reading it wrong. Maybe the structure was just unusual rock formations. Someone else said no. The readings showed metallic signatures, and natural rock cannot reflect signals the same way. The device picked up traces of unfamiliar elements, metals that didn't match anything commonly found underwater. The researchers double-checked their instruments again, hoping it would turn out to be a simple mistake. But the numbers remained the same. They were locked into something extraordinary. The expedition leader decided they needed to sight it more clearly. A drone was prepared for a deep dive. It wasn't a small drone like the ones used in shallow water exploration. This one was built for extreme depth, pressure, and darkness. Its camera system was strong enough to capture clear footage, even in places where no sunlight had ever reached. The operator slowly lowered the drone into the water, and everyone on board watched the live feed on a screen, waiting for the unknown object to appear. The dive was long, and tensions built with every passing minute. The ocean around the drone grew darker the deeper it went, until it looked like the drone was moving through ink. Only the drone's lights cut through the thick darkness. The crew waited with a mix of excitement and fear. They didn't speak much, not because they had nothing to say, but because they didn't want to interrupt whatever was about to unfold. When the drone reached the ocean floor, the viewers saw sandy ground shifting from the drone's movement. After a few seconds of searching, a strange shadow appeared on the screen. Something massive was lying there. The operator moved the drone closer. Slowly, the image became clearer, revealing a smooth metallic surface buried under layers of sand. The material didn't look rusted or decayed like shipwrecks normally do. It looked preserved, as if it was made from something that couldn't corrode. Light bounced off it in an unusual way, like the surface wasn't reflecting light, but absorbing and redirecting it. The drone hovered near a long crack in the structure, and the crew could see markings along it. These markings weren't letters from any language they knew. They weren't numbers or symbols from any known culture. They looked precise and intentional, carved or printed in ways that didn't resemble human craftsmanship. Some lines were thin as hair, some thick, forming patterns that looked like instructions or identification codes. But if they were instructions, who wrote them? And how long ago? The researchers stared quietly. A few goosebumps formed on arms and necks. The familiar became unfamiliar. The idea of discovering something old but human-made would have been exciting. But this seemed beyond that. Some of them whispered to themselves, not wanting to believe what they were thinking. Nobody wanted to say the word alien. It felt too dramatic, too unrealistic. They were scientific people. They didn't jump to wild conclusions. Yet the object forced their minds toward questions that normal science could not explain. The operator rotated the drone's camera around the side of the structure. The viewers caught sight of deep scratches along the metal, marks that looked like damage from high-speed impacts. The scratches were strange. They weren't caused by rusting, erosion, or underwater pressure. They resembled marks made by objects hitting it at incredible speed, maybe like debris from space. But how would a craft end up buried deep in the ocean if it came from space? Why wasn't it completely destroyed upon impact? These questions filled the air like smoke that refused to clear. Someone asked if the craft might be part of a secret human project, maybe advanced technology from a hidden military program. Another wondered how something secret could be this old and this deep underwater. If it were truly human, someone should have known about it. There should have been records. History doesn't just hide giant metal structures under the ocean without any trace. The longer the drone examined the craft, the more uneasy the team became. Finally, the leader made a decision. They needed more data, more scans, more confirmation. But they also needed to be cautious. Nobody knew what they were dealing with. If the material was unknown, it could react unpredictably. They would have to study it carefully, and maybe even report it to higher scientific authorities. Before pulling the drone back, the operator adjusted the scanner one last time. The readings shifted again, revealing something shocking, something none of them expected. Inside the structure, there seemed to be an area with breathable air. Not empty water, not compressed gas, actual oxygen-rich atmosphere was trapped inside the buried object. That meant two things. The craft was sealed, and whatever was inside hadn't been touched by water in a very long time. Silence filled the room. Nobody spoke for almost 30 seconds. In their minds, everyone formed the same chilling question, though no one dared to say it out loud. If there was air inside, then what else could be in there? For the first time in their professional lives, the explorers weren't just curious. They were afraid. Not because they expected danger, but because they realized they had stumbled onto something far beyond human understanding. Something that was never supposed to be found. The ocean had kept its secret for an unknown amount of time. And now, it seemed, it had chosen to reveal it. The team stood together, unsure whether they had just made the greatest discovery in history or opened a door they should have never approached. The deep-sea drone moved slowly over the massive object, its lights cutting through the pitch-black water. The closer it got, the more details appeared on the monitor. The metal surface of the craft was unlike anything the team had ever seen. It wasn't rusty or corroded like a normal shipwreck. Instead, it gleamed with a strange dull shine, almost as if the metal itself was alive, responding to the movement of the drone. Lines and grooves ran along the surface in patterns that made no sense to the human eye. They weren't random, but they didn't match any designs found in modern or ancient vessels. The team leaned closer, their hearts pounding. One of the researchers pointed at the monitor. "Look at that," they said. "Those scratches, they aren't natural. They look like they were caused by something hitting it from above. Maybe a rock, or something else." The others nodded, trying to analyze what they were seeing. The marks were deep and scattered along the hull, like battle scars. Yet, despite the damage, the craft seemed perfectly intact. The drone moved along the side of the object, and a strange shape began to appear. It was a dome-like structure protruding slightly from the main body. Its surface was smooth, without any obvious openings or hatches. The team felt a mix of awe and fear. "This doesn't look like anything human-made," one of them whispered. They had seen submarines, ships, and underwater stations. But this was something different. It was too precise, too advanced. Then, the drone sensors picked up something even more unusual. There was movement inside the structure. At first, everyone thought it was a reflection or some kind of optical illusion. But the motion was too deliberate, too consistent. Something or someone was inside. The crew froze. They hadn't expected this. If the craft was old, how could anything survive inside it? The exploration leader called for calm. "We need more data before jumping to conclusions," they said. But it was hard to stay calm. Every member of the team felt a mixture of excitement and dread. They had discovered something that could change everything, yet they had no idea what it really was. They decided to maneuver the drone closer to a flat section of the hull where the movements were most visible. As the camera zoomed in, shapes became clearer. There appeared to be compartments or pods inside, each one sealed off. In one of them, they could make out a figure. At first, it was hard to tell what it was. The lighting was dim, and the figure was partially hidden. But slowly, they realized it was a human. Alive, but unconscious, floating inside a transparent pod. The team gasped. Nobody expected to find a human inside a structure that seemed older than recorded history. Questions raced through their minds. How did this person get there? How long had they been inside? Was this part of some secret experiment, or something else entirely? The discovery left them in stunned silence. The pod itself was remarkable. It had markings and symbols that were unlike any language the team had studied. Some looked like letters, others like numbers, but none made sense. Wires and tubes connected the pod to the craft, suggesting it was designed to sustain life. Oxygen levels were stable, temperature controlled. Everything about it indicated careful planning, advanced technology, and an understanding of human biology far beyond the team's knowledge. The researchers began documenting everything, taking screenshots, videos, and sensor readings. They knew this was something historic, possibly the most important discovery of their careers. Yet, beneath the excitement, there was unease. The presence of a human inside a structure that seemed alien raised questions they couldn't answer. Was this a human experiment? Or had humans somehow traveled far beyond what anyone knew? As the drone explored further, they noticed more pods, though most appeared empty. Each compartment was perfectly preserved, as if frozen in time. The design of the interior suggested a purpose, but no one could understand it yet. It was clear this craft was built with care, designed for survival in conditions that were far from ordinary. Then came a moment of shock. A small hatch on the surface opened, as if sensing the presence of the drone. The motion was subtle but deliberate. The teen stared at the screen, hardly breathing. The craft seemed almost alive, responding to their investigation. It was as though it had been waiting for someone to arrive. The leader suggested they stop the drone and reassess. "We can't push too far without knowing what we're dealing with," they said. But the rest of the team couldn't look away. Every second brought more questions. If this was a human-made object, why had it been hidden so well? If it was not human, how had someone ended up inside safely? Contact was made with a nearby research facility. The team shared the images and readings, hoping for advice. Scientists at the facility were equally astonished. Some suggested the structure could be part of an unknown early human experiment in extreme survival. Others whispered about the possibility of extraterrestrial origin, though no one dared say it aloud in front of the full team. The decision was made to prepare for a controlled exploration. The craft was too important to ignore, and they couldn't risk losing it to time or ocean currents. Plans were made to use specialized equipment to gently access the interior without damaging it or endangering whoever or whatever was inside. The team worked through the night, preparing instruments, creating detailed maps of the craft, and ensuring safety protocols were followed. Every member felt a mix of fear and anticipation. They were about to touch something no human had ever seen up close, something that had remained hidden in the ocean for centuries or longer. As dawn approached, they finally felt ready. The drone hovered in place, lights illuminating the mysterious surface. Every movement was slow and careful. The team watched with bated breath, each member silently hoping that whatever lay inside could be understood without catastrophe. They knew that the next few hours would change everything. Whether this discovery would lead to answers or more questions, it was clear that nothing in their previous experience could have prepared them. The deep ocean, which had always seemed so empty and silent, had suddenly become the doorway to a story far greater than anyone had imagined. And in that darkness, beneath miles of water, the mysterious craft waited, perfectly preserved, holding secrets that might redefine humanity's understanding of itself and its place in the universe. The research vessel rocked gently as the team prepared for the next stage of the operation. The drone had already given them a clear view of the craft, but seeing a human inside changed everything. The figure in the pod was alive, yet unconscious, floating in an environment that had clearly sustained life for a very long time. The team had never encountered anything like this, and a mix of excitement and nervousness filled the cabin. The first challenge was clear, getting closer without damaging the craft or the pod. The structure was enormous, and its surface showed no obvious way in. The team debated whether to use mechanical arms from the drone or to wait for specialized equipment from the research facility. Every suggestion was cautious, measured. Nobody wanted to make a mistake that could destroy the discovery or harm the person inside. Finally, the leader decided on a controlled approach. A smaller, flexible manipulator arm attached to the drone was used to probe the surface gently. The pod reacted to the touch as if it were sensitive, and for a moment, the team held their breath. The metal was smooth and unyielding, yet it seemed almost aware of the presence of the drone. The slightest movement caused vibrations that traveled through the surface, and the human inside stirred slightly. It was subtle, but unmistakable. The team's excitement grew. They were about to make contact with a living person inside a structure no one had ever seen. Everyone on board became silent, their focus completely absorbed by the screen. The operators carefully maneuvered the drone around the pod, examining its seals, tubes, and markings. The technology was far beyond anything they had studied before. It was human-shaped, yet the materials and design suggested a level of engineering that was not documented in any known records. One scientist speculated that this pod had been designed to preserve a person in extreme conditions. The way the fluid circulated, the oxygen levels were maintained, and the temperature controlled. It was almost like a life support system designed for survival in space. If that was true, the craft could have been built as part of a secret mission, one that had remained hidden from the world for decades or even centuries. As the drone hovered closer, the human inside began to move more noticeably. A finger twitched, then a hand shifted slightly. The team could hardly believe what they were seeing. The pod was functioning perfectly. It had kept this person alive, in a completely unknown environment, deep underwater, far from air, light, and warmth. It was a testament to human ingenuity, or possibly something beyond known human knowledge, The leader decided it was time to prepare for extraction. They needed to bring the human and the pod to the surface carefully. The research facility sent instructions on how to safely attach the lifting equipment to the craft. Every movement had to be precise. Even a small mistake could rupture the pod or damage the structure. The team worked quietly but efficiently, checking and rechecking every connection. Hours passed as they secured the craft. The ocean currents shifted, making the task more difficult, but the crew remained focused. When the lifting cables were finally in place, everyone held their breath as the winches began to pull. Slowly, the pod started to emerge from the sand and water. It moved upward with incredible care, as if the ocean itself was reluctant to let it go. Once the pod reached the surface, the team rushed to secure it on the deck. The human inside was pale, but breathing steadily. The pod's life support had done its job perfectly. The researchers stared in awe, realizing they were witnessing a story that had started long before their time and was continuing in ways no one could fully understand. They began the careful process of opening the pod. The seals were complex, layered, and designed to maintain pressure and temperature. Using specialized tools from the research facility, the team gradually removed the outer layers. As they worked, the human began to stir more clearly. Eyes opened, scanning the surroundings with a mix of confusion and awareness. The team spoke softly, trying to reassure the person without startling them. When fully opened, the human looked remarkably healthy, considering the circumstances. The body showed no obvious signs of aging or deterioration from the long confinement. The technology inside the pod had clearly preserved life in an extraordinary way. The researchers were amazed and cautious at the same time. How had this been possible? And why had it remained hidden under the ocean for so long? Medical staff, carefully coordinated with the research facility, began monitoring vital signs. The human was alert but weak, needing rest and careful rehydration. Questions began to form in everyone's minds. Who was this person? Were they part of a secret human mission? Or had something else placed them here? The documents, markings, and pod design suggested knowledge far beyond what was publicly known. As the hours passed, the human slowly became more coherent. Words were limited at first, but gestures and expressions conveyed confusion, curiosity, and even recognition. The team realized they were interacting with someone who had knowledge of events that no living person had documented publicly. The human seemed aware of locations, objects, and procedures that the world had never recorded. The research team knew they had discovered something far more significant than just a buried craft. This human represented a connection to hidden history, advanced technology, and possibly missions that the public had never been told about. The realization weighed heavily on everyone. Every decision from this point forward could change how the world understood its own history and the own potential reach of human technology. The vessel maintained its position in the calm morning water, the pod safely secured, and the team continued to observe. The human, now slightly stronger, began to respond to simple questions, revealing fragments of information that puzzled the scientists. Names of locations, coded sequences, and references to distant, inhospitable environments were mentioned. It was clear this person had trained or lived in conditions far removed from normal human experience. The research leader carefully documented every detail, understanding that this was a historic moment. They could not rush. The human's health and safety came first. At the same time, every reading, every video, and every observation was being recorded for scientific and historical purposes. The potential significance of what they were seeing was beyond comprehension. By the end of the first day, the team realized they had only begun to uncover the story. The craft had hidden a human for unknown reasons, in an environment that should have been deadly. The technology inside the pod suggested knowledge and skills far beyond public understanding. And the person inside, now awake, represented the bridge between the unknown past and the present. Every member of the team felt a mixture of awe, curiosity, and cautious respect. They were not just witnesses to history. They were participants in a discovery that might redefine humanity's understanding of itself and its capabilities. The ocean, which had kept its secret for so long, had finally given up one of its greatest mysteries. And the story was only beginning. The human, now stable, was placed under careful observation, monitored for both physical and psychological health. The team understood that communication would take time, patience, and trust. Each day brought new questions, and each answer revealed even more complexity. The crew had found more than a craft. They had found a story of survival, technology, and human determination that had been hidden for generations. As night fell on the research vessel, the team gathered quietly, reflecting on what they had seen. The human in the pod was no longer just a mystery. They were a living connection to something extraordinary. The discovery was no longer just scientific, it was deeply human. And as the stars reflected on the calm ocean surface, everyone knew that what lay ahead would test their understanding, their patience, and perhaps even the limits of what humanity thought was possible. The next morning began with a tension that was heavier than the calm ocean around the research vessel. The team had spent the night carefully monitoring the human recovered from the pod. Vital signs were stable, and the person appeared to be resting peacefully, but there was a nervous energy aboard the vessel. Everyone understood that the discovery was no longer just a scientific mystery. It was something that could attract the attention of powerful organizations, ones that might not want the truth to be revealed. Their fears were quickly confirmed when an unmarked ship appeared on the horizon. At first, it seemed like a routine patrol, but as it drew closer, the team realized it carried personnel in dark uniforms and no official insignia. They were professionals, well-trained, moving with precision, and clearly aware of the research vessel's activity. The leader of the expedition contacted them cautiously, trying to explain the situation without sounding alarmist. The response was clear. The craft and the human inside were under their jurisdiction. Now, the arrival of these authorities brought a mixture of relief and worry. The team knew they could not handle the situation alone, especially given the strange technology and the human in the pod. But at the same time, there was an immediate sense of restriction. Access to the data, the video feeds, and even the recovered pod became limited. The researchers were no longer fully in control. They had stumbled into something much larger than themselves. A secret hidden from the world for reasons they could only guess at over the next few hours. The professionals from the unmarked ship examined the craft and the pod. They worked with equipment far more advanced than anything the research team had. Sensors, scanners, and analytical tools measured every inch of the object. The metallic surface of the craft was studied carefully, showing a composition that did not match any known alloy or metal combination used in human industry. The markings on the surface were cataloged and compared against databases, but nothing matched. It was as if the object existed in its own category, outside conventional human knowledge. Meanwhile, the human in the pod remained calm, seemingly aware of the presence of the new personnel. The researchers observed quietly as the professionals conducted their examination. Though the situation was restrictive, it was clear the authorities were careful with the human safety. Medical staff among them monitored vital signs, and some attempted gentle communication, though the language and codes used were precise and formal. The research leader realized that they were witnessing not just a recovery operation, but a controlled investigation into a program that had been secret for decades. Questions arose in the minds of everyone on board. Why had this craft been hidden in the ocean for so long? Why had a human been placed inside it, alive and preserved? And most importantly, why did the authorities seem so cautious in their approach? There was an implication that the craft, the pod, and the human were part of something highly classified. During a brief meeting on the deck, one of the authority figures spoke quietly to the research leader. They explained that the craft was part of an experimental program that had been operating in secrecy for many years. According to them, this project had attempted to explore extreme environments and survival scenarios far beyond public knowledge. Only a select few knew about its existence. The human in the pod had been part of these missions, trained and prepared for conditions that would challenge ordinary life. The researchers listened in disbelief. The story being revealed was remarkable, almost unbelievable. It suggested that humanity had conducted experimental missions using technology and methods unknown to the general public. The recovered human had been placed in the pod to survive extreme conditions, possibly far beyond what any ordinary vessel or life support system could endure. The ocean had hidden this experiment, preserving it until now. While the authorities worked, the research team tried to document as much as possible. Every scan, every observation, and every interaction was recorded. They understood that this was a historic moment, even if much of it would remain classified for the time being. The experience was a mix of frustration and awe. Frustration because access and control were limited, and awe because they were witnessing a part of human history that had been deliberately hidden. Conversations with the authorities revealed hints of a global network of secrecy. The craft, they explained, had been designed to operate in what they called Class 3 environments, places where humans would not normally survive without advanced technology. The oceans, the extreme climates, and even potential extraterrestrial sites had been part of planning. This was not a casual experiment. It was carefully designed, monitored, and hidden. The research team noticed that the human in the pod responded to subtle cues from the authorities. Small movements, eye contact, and slight gestures indicated awareness and understanding. It became clear that the individual had undergone extraordinary training and preparation. The human was not a regular person. They were someone who had lived through experiences beyond ordinary human capability. This realization added a new layer of complexity to the mission. Later in the day, a secure communication line was established between the authorities on the unmarked ship and a facility on land. Instructions were given regarding the transport of both the pod and the craft. The research vessel was asked to cooperate, but reminded of the importance of secrecy. The team understood the gravity of the situation. They were witnessing a story that, if revealed, could reshape the understanding of human history and technology. The research team also observed the methods used to scan the interior of the craft. Non-invasive imaging technology revealed compartments, passageways, and systems that were far beyond modern engineering. The interior layout suggested long-term habitation and survival capabilities. Every detail was precise and efficient, showing careful planning and advanced understanding of materials, human physiology, and environmental challenges. As evening approached, the human in the pod was carefully transported to a controlled environment on the research vessel. Specialists monitored every vital sign, adjusting conditions to maintain stability. The person began to show signs of awareness, responding to gentle touch and verbal cues. The team watched in awe as the human interacted, slowly regaining consciousness and beginning to recognize the surroundings. The team realized that this was only the beginning. The authorities had limited information to share, and much of the craft's purpose remained unclear. What they could see was remarkable: a human preserved for an unknown period, advanced technology capable of sustaining life under extreme conditions, and a story of survival and experimentation that had been hidden for decades. Late at night, the research team gathered to reflect. The ocean, which had concealed this craft and its occupant for so long, had finally revealed a fragment of its secrets. The human in the pod was more than a survivor. They were a living connection to a secret history, a program that had pushed the boundaries of human endurance and technological innovation. The team understood the responsibility placed on them. Even though much of the operation was controlled by the authorities, the researchers were witnesses to events that could change the understanding of human potential. They could document, observe, and preserve what they had seen, knowing that the world might not know the full story for years or even decades. As the night grew deeper, the ocean around them remained calm, but the atmosphere aboard the vessel was charged with anticipation. Everyone understood that the craft, the pod, and the human inside were part of something far greater than anyone had imagined. The discovery was no longer just a scientific curiosity. It was a doorway to secrets that humanity had kept hidden from itself. And as the stars reflected on the water, the team knew that the next steps would bring even more revelations, secrets that would challenge everything they thought they knew about human history, survival, and the technology that made it possible. The story of the craft and the human inside had only begun to unfold, and the ocean held many more answers waiting to be discovered. The following morning aboard the research vessel began quietly, yet there was a sense of anticipation in the air that no one could ignore. The human recovered from the pod had spent the night under careful observation, and now there were signs of increasing awareness. Eyes that had been closed for so long now moved with focus, scanning the surroundings with curiosity and caution. Every movement seemed measured, as if the person was trying to understand where they were, who was present, and what had happened. The researchers approached gently, aware that any sudden movement could disturb someone who had been in isolation for an unknown period. The person's breathing was steady, and vital signs indicated stability, but their expression carried the weight of a long and mysterious journey. The team realized that this individual was more than just a survivor. They were a living witness to events that had been carefully hidden from the world. As the hours passed, the human began to respond to subtle questions and gestures. Their words were slow at first, halting, but with effort, sentences began to form. The speech was precise, almost rehearsed, as if every word was carefully chosen. Even though the language was familiar, some references and terms were strange, suggesting experiences far beyond ordinary life. They spoke of environments where survival required extraordinary training, of locations that challenged every human limit, and of technology designed for extreme conditions. The team listened in astonishment. This was not just a story of survival. It was a glimpse into a secret world of human experimentation and exploration. The pod, the craft, and the person inside were all part of a program that had operated outside public knowledge. Missions had been planned to test human endurance in conditions previously thought impossible. The person in front of them had been trained to endure heat, cold, pressure, and isolation in ways the team had never imagined. As the day went on, more details emerged. The human described the interior of the craft with precision, pointing to areas that the researchers had not fully explored. There were compartments for life support, areas for long-term food and water storage, and systems designed to monitor and sustain human health in isolation. Every detail suggested advanced engineering and careful planning. The craft had not been intended for ordinary travel. It had been designed for survival in environments that were deadly to most humans. The authorities aboard unmarked ship continued their monitoring and occasionally communicated with the research team. They confirmed that the human had been part of an experimental program that explored extreme environments, sometimes outside Earth itself. Though the program had been hidden, its purpose had always been to expand human capability and survival potential. The recovered individual was a direct result of this program, a living record of what had been attempted and achieved. The researchers were both amazed and humbled. They realized that the human in the pod had experienced conditions that no ordinary person could imagine. Extreme pressure, isolation, and life support systems that were beyond current knowledge. All of these were part of the training and survival plan. Yet despite the isolation and unknown dangers, the individual had survived intact with no obvious physical damage, a testament to both human resilience and the technology designed to support it. Gradually, trust began to develop between the team and the recovered human. Gestures, shared observation, and careful communication allowed them to learn more about the missions that had led to the current situation. The person described simulations, training modules, and actual missions that had pushed human limits. They spoke of places where the environment was hostile in ways that ordinary humans could not endure, and how the craft had been engineered to keep them alive. Under those conditions, each revelation added layers of complexity to the mystery. The craft had not simply been a vessel. It had been a controlled environment designed to prepare and sustain human life in unknown and dangerous circumstances. The recovered individual was not merely a survivor, they were a participant in a hidden chapter of human history, one that had tested human limits in ways the world could not yet understand. The research team also began to document the human's physiological responses. Vital signs, reaction times, and cognitive functions were recorded carefully. It became clear that the training and technology used had optimized survival, minimizing damage to the body even under extreme isolation and environmental stress. The human's capacity to recover and respond was unlike anything previously recorded, suggesting that both the training and the pod's technology were far beyond conventional understanding. In addition to physical survival, the humans shared insights into psychological endurance. They spoke of methods used to maintain focus, clarity, and emotional stability in isolation, describing techniques that had been rigorously applied during missions. These techniques had allowed the individual to remain aware, calm, and functional, even when entirely alone in conditions designed to test every limit. The researchers were fascinated not only by the technology, but also by the human adaptability demonstrated. The individual's survival was a testament to the potential of human resilience when combined with careful planning and advanced systems. It was clear that this was not a random occurrence. It was a carefully executed experiment in survival, endurance, and technological capability. As the day wore on, the recovered human began to provide more detailed descriptions of the craft itself. Compartments for scientific study, areas designed to simulate different environmental conditions, and mechanisms for sustaining life under extreme pressure were all described. The technology had anticipated multiple scenarios, from deep-sea environments to low-oxygen situations, and the human had learned to operate and adapt to these systems as part of their training. The research team began to see the magnitude of what had been achieved. This was more than a survival story. It was evidence of human ingenuity and determination to overcome challenges that had once seemed insurmountable. The craft, the pod, and the human inside were a testament to careful planning, advanced technology, and the capacity of humans to adapt to extreme conditions when prepared and supported. By the evening, the recovered human was showing remarkable progress. They could move more confidently, interact more clearly, and communicate with increasing detail. The research team took careful notes, aware that this experience was providing insights into both human capability and technology that the world had never seen. Every question asked brought new information. Every answer revealed hidden layers of planning and design. The authorities remained cautious, monitoring both the human and the researchers. They emphasized the importance of secrecy, noting that the craft and its occupant represented sensitive knowledge. Yet even within these restrictions, the research team could see the extraordinary story unfolding. A human preserved and protected under extreme conditions, technology that had maintained life in unknown environments, and evidence of a program that had quietly expanded the boundaries of human survival. As night fell, the team gathered to reflect. The human in the pod was no longer just a mystery. They were a living record of human resilience, technology, and endurance. The story of the craft and its occupant revealed hidden chapters of exploration, survival, and the extraordinary lengths humans could go to understand and endure extreme environments. The ocean, which had concealed the craft for so long, had finally shared its secret. And the human recovered from the pod was the bridge between the unknown past and the present, a testament to what humanity could achieve when preparation, technology, and determination worked together. The discovery was no longer just scientific, it was deeply human, revealing both the potential and the courage that had been hidden for generations. The morning sun rose over the calm ocean, casting long reflections on the water as the research vessel prepared for its final stage of the mission. The craft, the human recovered from the pod, and the team itself were now at the center of a story far larger than any of them had imagined. Everyone aboard understood that the events unfolding were extraordinary. This was not merely a scientific expedition. It was a glimpse into human history that had been hidden from the world. The authorities had taken the lead in planning the next steps. Their focus was clear: secure the craft, ensure the human safety, and collect every piece of information possible. For the research team, this was both exciting and challenging. They had spent weeks documenting the technology, the human survival systems, and every detail of the craft, but now they were limited to observation. They could watch, learn, and record, but the final control lay in the hands of others. The recovered human had now become more communicative. Their understanding of the surrounding environment was increasing with each passing hour. Words came easier, movements were more confident, and the gaze was more aware. The person began to describe what they had experienced inside the pod, how time had felt stretched, and how every moment required focus and patience. The team listened intently, realizing that these were not just stories of survival, they were lessons in human endurance and adaptability. Meanwhile, the authorities prepared the craft for transport. Specialized cables and lifting mechanisms were carefully attached, ensuring that no part of the structure would be damaged. The craft itself remained mysterious, its metallic surface reflecting the sunlight in ways that made it appear almost alive. The markings and symbols were cataloged for further study, though their full meaning remained elusive. The entire process was slow and deliberate, reflecting the importance of the mission and the fragility of what was being moved out. As the craft began to rise from the water, the team watched in silence. Sediment and small debris fell away, revealing more of the hull's structure. Its size and design were staggering, unlike any vessel known to human history. The interior compartments, life support systems, and unknown technology hinted at a level of engineering far beyond what the world had ever seen. And yet, despite all the complexity, the craft had kept a human alive in perfect condition. The authorities worked carefully to secure the human as well. They were placed in a controlled medical environment on the research vessel, with life support, monitoring equipment, and specialized care. The individual now showed more awareness, interacting with the team and authorities with deliberate movements and clear recognition. The human's calm demeanor, despite weeks or months of isolation, was a testament to the training and preparation they had received. The research team had a chance to observe the human's recovery closely. They noted the adaptability, the resilience, and the level of awareness that had been maintained despite the extreme conditions inside the pod. The person's memory, coordination, and ability to communicate were remarkable. It became clear that the technology inside the pod, combined with careful preparation and training, had created a perfect environment for survival. As the day progressed, discussions between the research team and authorities revealed more about the craft's origin. The recovered human was part of an experimental program that had pushed human limits in extreme environments. Missions had been carefully planned to explore areas of the Earth, and possibly beyond, where ordinary humans could not survive. The craft had been designed to sustain life, monitor health, and provide the necessary support for long-term survival in harsh conditions. Even with the explanations, many questions remained. Why had the program been kept secret? How many other missions had been attempted, and what had happened to those participants? The recovered human could answer only a portion of these questions, leaving much of the story shrouded in mystery. The secrecy surrounding the craft and its occupant suggested that this knowledge had been deliberately hidden, perhaps to protect both the public and the experimental subjects. As night fell, the team reflected on what had been revealed. The human inside the pod had survived incredible conditions. The craft had remained hidden for an unknown period, and advanced technology had enabled what seemed impossible. The ocean had concealed this history, but now it had given a glimpse of humanity's capability, resilience, and ingenuity. The research team began to compile a full record of the mission. Every scan, observation, and interaction was documented. The human's experience, the craft's technology, and the controlled operation of the authorities formed a narrative that would be studied for years to come. Even if most of the information remained classified, the team understood the significance of their role as witnesses to a hidden chapter of human history. The recovered human continued to recover strength, demonstrating remarkable adaptability and awareness. As conversations progressed, fragments of knowledge about survival strategies, life support systems, and extreme environment training emerged. These insights were not only important for understanding the craft, but also offered lessons in human resilience and the potential of technology to enhance survival. The authorities made arrangements for the craft and the recovered human to be transported to a secure facility for further study. The research team remained on board to assist with documentation and observation, though they were no longer in control of the operation. There was a sense of closure, but also anticipation. This was only the beginning of understanding the craft's purpose and the full story of the human survivor. As the craft was carefully lifted onto transport vessels, the ocean around them remained calm. The sun set, casting long reflections on the water, as if marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The human survivor, now stable and responsive, looked out across the horizon, perhaps contemplating the vastness of the world and the experiences that had brought them to this moment. The research team gathered quietly, reflecting on the journey. They had witnessed something extraordinary, a human preserved and protected by advanced technology, a craft that defied conventional understanding, and a hidden chapter of human exploration that had remained secret for decades. The story of the pod, the craft, and the survivor was a testament to human ingenuity, courage, and adaptability. Even as the operation concluded, the team knew that the implications would last far beyond the mission. The discovery challenged what humanity knew about its history, its technology, and its ability to survive in extreme conditions. The human survivor was a living bridge to a hidden past, a reminder of what humans could endure and achieve with preparation, training, and advanced systems. As night deepened over the ocean, the team felt a profound sense of awe. The craft, the recovered human, and the mysteries of the deep had revealed a story that combined science, survival, and human determination. It was a story that reminded them of the limitless potential of human ingenuity and the resilience that could carry life through environments once thought impossible. The mission ended, but the story was far from complete. The craft and the human survivor would continue to be studied in secure facilities. Secrets would be slowly uncovered, and humanity's understanding of its own capabilities would gradually expand. The ocean had kept its secret for generations, and now, through careful observation and extraordinary discovery, a new chapter of human history had begun, one that would inspire, challenge, and amazed those who came after, even as the vessel sailed back toward known waters. Everyone on board felt that they had glimpsed something extraordinary, a story of survival, technology, and human resilience that could not be forgotten. The craft, the pod, and the human inside were more than discoveries. They were reminders of the hidden potential within humanity and the enduring strength of life. Even in the most impossible conditions. And as the waves gently lapped against the hull and the stars reflected on the endless ocean, it became clear that the human story, the craft, and the secrets of the deep had only begun to be understood. The past had revealed itself, the present had been shaped by it, and the future would carry the lessons of survival, ingenuity, and endurance forward in ways no one could yet imagine.